We're going to talk about the differences in our soils versus other soils and what to look for when you're watering. This first plant, as you can see, the soil is very dry, way down in, and of course, the first thing you look for in a plant to see if it needs to be watered or not are signs of things like wilting of leaves, the strongness, the health, how strong and rigid the plant is itself. And then how does the soil feel? Also, you can test by how heavy the pot is. If the pot's very light, you know that it's deficient in water, so you would need to water. Here's a pot that looks very dry on top. This is one that is just on the edge. Pots like to be drenched at first, or not pots, but the roots like to be drenched at first, and then give a dry out period, because if you get too much water in the pot, the roots can't get the oxygen. And the same goes with all soils, but even our soils. And this one is a case of, this is on the edge of needing to be watered. If you stick your finger down in a couple of knuckles, this is damp, but it's not really wet. You can see how it still is pretty loose in there. Of course, I dug in too far. You don't want to do that and disrupt your roots, but I wanted to show you how the soil looks. So this is on the verge of needing to be watered right now. The leaves are beginning to be a little bit limp, but it's not in bad shape. You want to try and catch the pot, of course, before it shows signs of wilting, of needing water, but that is one way you can look at it. So first you want to look at the leaves. Are they vibrant? Are they healthy? Are they wilted looking? Is the plant rigid, nice and strong, or is it showing some weakness? How does the soil feel? And then test the weight of the pot. This one is definitely lighter than this one. This is an example of a well-watered plant. It's not compacted so that you've got so much soil or water that it's dripping out. You never want to do that. But it is wet enough. When you go down a couple of knuckles, you can see that it's wet on down. It's not just top watered. It goes all the way down to the roots. The other thing to watch is that your plant should match the size of your container. If you have a container that's way bigger than your plant, then your roots are not going to be able to reach down far enough to get all of the water, and the water can sit in the bottom of your container, which creates an environment for fungus and for root rot. Signs of overwatering can be confusing, because a lot of times overwatering, here's a couple of leaves that have been overwatered. They have some of the same characteristics as the underwatered leaf. The difference is you can see the curling around the edges, and that's the main. You see how it's kind of shriveled and starting to curl up. These leaves are just wilted, and these are showing signs of curling. So these would be a case where you're overwatering. Most plants can handle a little bit of overwater, a little bit of under, but extremes will start showing these kinds of signs on your plants. This is a bag of an 8-gallon bag of our soil. As you can see, it comes dry. So it's necessary for you to hydrate it, which also activates the mycorrhizae and gets the soil going before you use it to plant. You could put 2 gallons of water straight into the bag and let it sit overnight to help with the hydrating process. But for lack of time right now, we're going to go ahead and just dump it into the wheelbarrow to show you how much water and what it looks like when you have the water in. We're going to use 2 gallons of water to 1 8-gallon bag of soil for the process of hydration. You can see that the weight of these bags makes it real easy, even for an old lady like me, to work with. Okay, we're going to pour in our 2 gallons of water. And mix. Just like cooking. Mix well until all the batter is wet. You can do this with the shovel. You can do this with your hands. Whatever's easier. You can see it starting to spread out. As the water activates the soil will also start to heat up some. So if you're going to be planting into large containers that are very deep, then you might need to let your soil rest for 8 hours, 24 hours, depending on how big your container is, so that the soil's not too warm, because it can get pretty warm. And you don't want to stress out your plants if it's too warm. But if you're just planting in your normal size pots, 5, 10, even 10 gallons, it's not too bad, so that it won't get that hot. There'll be enough air, especially if you water it right away after you plant. See, there's still a few little dry pockets. I'm going to keep going until you get it all stirred in. I usually like to finish it off with my hands, because then I can feel the dry pockets and get down into the edges of the container better too. Takes the water very quickly. Because it's dry, you have 8 gallons in the bag, but after hydration, it's going to expand 25%, so you're going to have more like a 10-gallon volume in your soil once it's hydrated. So there you have it. Nice hydrated soil. Just enough to kind of clump, but not saturated. We're going to show you now what we call ReCharge soil that has already been used for a grow season. This soil we brought in from outside, from our troughs from last grow season. You can see the consistency has started to break down. So we need to give it a bit of a recharge. Compared to, this is fresh soil. You can see that there's more, there are bigger particles in our fresh. Now this is also damp from sitting outside in the rain, so it's already got quite a bit of moisture in it. In order to do the recharge, you're going to use about 10% of your container. So this is about between 3 and 4 gallons, probably closer to 4 gallons. So we're using just under a half a gallon of our, or a fourth of a gallon of our recharge mix. We're going to dump it out. You can see there's still roots left in it from last season. And then mix in our recharge. We're going to stir it up, mix it into a good consistency. You can do this with a shovel or do it with your hands. This is also helping to absorb some of that moisture that was already in the old soil. Now you have a nice, consistent soil ready for planting. So I'm going to go ahead and plant a cucumber that we have. Again, this soil is pretty moist. If you were going to use soil that had been in a dry situation, then you might want to add the water while it's mixed, during the mix, and not after you get it in the pot. You can see the plant likes our soil and is looking for more. Loosen up the roots a little bit. Try not to damage any more than we have to get it out. And that's a nice healthy root system. This is a cucumber munchie. Already got some cucumbers on it. It was planted a little over a month ago. from seed. Nice, rich look to your soil as well. You can see that filled up my pot with a little more to spare, not really. I'm going to give it just a touch of water just to help the consistency, get the roots good and wet so the transplant goes well without any kind of shock. And there you have a cucumber in a second season soil remix with our ReCharge ready to go. Okay, we just finished recharging this soil and planting in it. We've taken a sample of the soil. It's always a good idea to test your EC and your pH to make sure that there aren't any drastic changes. So we're going to do that using our pH meter that you can buy, or if you don't have one, don't want to purchase one, you can always take it to your local extension office to get your soils tested too. But you want to use a neutral pH, which is 7. We calibrate our meter first. You also want to use water that's as close to neutral as possible. So again, you want to use water that is around a 7 pH in your testing. This is calibrating it to that 7.0. Okay. Rule of thumb is to use equal parts water and soil when it comes to your EC, and the same thing goes, you can use that also with your pH. So just pour it in, stir it up a little bit, and see what she reads. You're looking for a pH of between 6 and 7 for our soils. Start off the bottom. So it looks like we have a pH of 6.6 for our recharged soil, which is good. It's in a good range. Now we're going to check the EC, the electrical conductivity. This shows you how much food there is for your plant. How much fertilizer. You see here we're reading 1.6, 1.8 range. You want to have a good range we have read and from what we've tested is at least 1. So if you get into the 1.5 to 2, 2's hot for some things, but some plants will like the 2, but a good range is in that middle range of 1.5, 1.6. So this has got plenty of food to get you through another growth season. That's the recharge test.